ultimate in high-fidelity music listening and home recording pleasure within the reach of everyone.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. What red-blooded kid wasn't excited about the promise of playing as a Power Ranger in a game that looked just like the TV show? OMG, well, it turned out that the game was more of a collection of cutscenes that left entire birthday parties full of 10-year-olds bored out of their minds. The major problem in this game is the complete lack of gameplay. To play, you would make a decision, and then watch a cutscene showing you what happened when you made that decision. It wasn't ideal. Virtual Bart. There are so many good Simpsons games that it was almost inevitable a bad one would get released sooner or later. Introducing Virtual Bart. Boy, does this game stink. You probably rented this game dozens of times wondering when it would actually get fun. The game isn't so much of an actual Simpsons game as it is a collection of side games that were packaged together as one narrative. This wouldn't be so bad if any of the games were actually fun to play. Unfortunately, they are not. Back to the Future. If there were one game to erase from time, this might be it. Back to the Future is a tie-in that's not all that concerned with actually doing anything that's in the movie. The player guides Marty through levels where he has to skitch to school, and another where he throws root beer floats at his antagonists. Those levels could be fun if the controls weren't so sloppy. It doesn't help that the game was made for the NES, a system not known for being the apex of accuracy. It was entirely possible to fail at a level just because you pushed the left control button a little too hard. Hard pass stuck. More Back to the Future 336 of 784. Every single NES game ranked from best to worst. 55 of 105. The best NES adventure games. 65 of 93. The best NES strategy games. Spider-Man and Venom, Maximum Carnage. Maximum Carnage is the video game equivalent of the edgy guy in your classroom that loves to bring up his subscription to Rotten.com. It's a slog of a Final Fight clone, but without any of the fun. The coolest part of the game was the soundtrack by Green Jelly, something that feels normal now. The gameplay is your basic punch, kick, and web shoot combo, but it's super hard. At the time, it felt designed to keep players from actually wanting to play it. Maybe that was the point. Still, it wasn't very good. More Spider-Man and Venom. Maximum Carnage. 27 of 158. The best comic book-based video games. 26 of 50. The best Carnage versions of all time. 32 of 51. The greatest versions of Venom. Ranked. Home Alone. Home Alone is essentially a puzzle game where the player tries to trap the on-screen antagonists Harry and Marv while running through different levels. It's basically Pac-Man but with traps. The game is fine, albeit boring after a couple of levels. Like many games that were rushed through production, the gameplay is startling bad. The response time for which button you press on your controller and what you're doing on screen has an odd delay, and sometimes the player just gets stuck. It's genuinely the last thing you want to happen when you're being chased by two Chicagoland home invaders. More Home Alone. 54 of 135. List of movie games. Video games based on movies. 164 of 298. The best Sega Genesis games of all time. 441 of 784. Every single NES game ranked from best to worst. The Karate Kid. There was a trick in the Karate Kid that seems like it was meant to keep drawing young players who didn't know any better back to its terrible open arms. The opening of the game had you run through the karate contest that ends the original film. That was kind of fun and pretty easy to win. Directly following the tournament, then your character was whisked away to the magical world of Okinawa, where Daniel-san walked around in the rain. The villains in this section were incredibly overpowered, making it something that you never wanted to play again. Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero. Do you remember how cool it was that the Mortal Kombat games were going to branch out into a series of action-adventure games that explored the backstories of each character? Do you also remember how bad Mortal Kombat Mythologies was? The actually playability of the game was nearly impossible. Even if you got past the confusing button configuration, you still had to deal with cutscenes that didn't help the story. This was the first time a Mortal Kombat game let the world down, and it definitely wouldn't be the last. More Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero 53 of 102, the best beat-em-up games of all time, 105 of 125, the best PlayStation fighting games, 48 of 108, the best Midway games list. Batman Forever. Batman Forever was one of those games that looked awesome in the demo. Batman could morph into a bulletproof sarcophagus thing. He could whip his cape. He was a regular Captain Awesome. Unfortunately, all of that stuff was basically impossible to do if you were a 10-year-old who hadn't yet mastered the intricacies of button mashing. The game looked awful. The visuals were so dark that it was genuinely hard to see what was happening on screen. Aside from the grim look of the game, it was nearly impossible to know how to control the characters. It's likely that if you rented this as a kid, you spent the entire weekend trying to figure out how to get through the first level. Friday the 13th. A video game where you get to kill Jason should have been a dream for horror fans. This travesty of a side-scroller was a total down. That didn't mean we didn't spend months trying to run our way across Camp Crystal Lake, dodging wolves and zombies. You know, like in the movie. The gameplay is almost impossible, and while there are multiple characters to choose from, the creators didn't see much of a point in providing the player any of their stats, so you have to go through the game blind. This kind of gameplay calls for repeat run-throughs, but after taking so much abuse from Jason, you don't really want to. Zelda Roman 2: The Adventure of Link. What a missed opportunity. For anyone that loved the original Legend of Zelda game, The Adventure of Link was such a confusing misstep that it almost turned everyone off the series forever. While it's cool that Link would be involved in a semi-RPG early on in his run, the game never does anything with the concept, so the player is just left walking around for hours at a time. The concept has been vastly improved recently, but this NES sequel is a hefty dud. In the decades that followed The Adventure of Link, the game has received its fair share of props for being innovative, but just because it was a good idea doesn't mean that it was a good game. More Zelda Roman 2: The Adventure of Link, 251 of 1371, the 100+ best video games of all time, ranked by fans 77 of 354, the greatest RPG video games ever made, 91 of 119, the best video game sequels. Ecco the Dolphin. Ecco the Dolphin. Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal.
Hey guys, guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video then. Take care. Bye.